Hey everybody, it's Kevin DeWalt of Prolego. Rust is getting a lot of inbound requests from people, all saying something along the lines of, hey, my CEO's been playing with ChatGPT and is all excited about it and tells me I've got to come up with a strategy for GPT. So since we don't have time to respond to all these requests, I thought I would try to give you some initial tips on how to start thinking about creating your GPT strategy or your large language model strategy. So I'm going to do my best to compress 20 years of experience into a 10-minute video without any preparation or notes, and so bear with me. Generally speaking, we've seen two different approaches to creating a strategy around AI and large language models. The first one I'm going to call is the big strategy approach, and the second one is the quick POC approach. And it really depends on your organizational goals and your time frame. So let me take them one at a time. The big strategy approach is typically when you're going to go to your board, your CEO, and ask for a big budget to be able to begin implementing an AI transformation strategy. And just part of good corporate governance, you can't go to your board and ask for $100 million over 5 years to implement an AI strategy. They're not just going to write you a check without a plan. I mean, obviously that wouldn't be prudent. So to develop that kind of strategy, there's a lot of the typical elements to it that are part of any sort of strategic undertaking. There's the program design and roadmaps and timelines and organization and everything. But the biggest and the most critical part of it is identifying the use cases within your organization for the technology that are going to really help you realize a business value from the initiative. Usually the best way to begin that process is by going out to all of your business constituents and talking to them about how they work today and looking for opportunities to apply some of these large language models technologies to be able to improve your business process. And this works a lot like any early stage customer discovery interview process that's been a part of product management best practice for the past 15 or 20 years or so. But there is one key element of it really will make or break your success, and that is the teams that are going out and doing the interviews need to be able to ask questions in a way that's going to elicit the kind of responses that your product strategy team is going to need to be able to put together the plan. Because you don't want to come back with a pile of use cases. You need to take these use cases and consolidate them into a bunch of capabilities and architectural functions that you can start working on to be able to execute on your strategy. So easy to explain with an example. Let's just say you're going to sit down with a group of analysts or a group of lawyers and you're going to talk to them about their workflow and what they do every day to see if there's opportunities to use a large language model. Well, you can't sit down with them and say, hey, do you need AI or do you need NLP? Because they're not going to know what that means. And you can't even ask them, do you need information classification or entity extraction or semantic search? Because they don't know what that means either. So you have to talk to them about their workflow. So that conversation might go something like, oh, okay, it sounds like you handle a lot of large documents. What's the format of those documents? The person may say, oh, they're in PDFs. Oh, interesting. So do you have to search through these PDFs? Oh yeah, we've got to search. It's a real pain in the rear. How does that happen? Well, we do a control F, and sometimes we get back too many results. We can't find the section we're looking for, or we get too few results, and it's just not easy. Okay, so how do you solve that problem today? The person will usually say something along the lines of, well, I got this sticky note right here on my screen that has all the keyword combinations I use to search through PDFs. Like, bang, right there. That's the information you need to elicit from a business customer that's going to help your product strategy team figure out an opportunity. Because right there, I know that this is an information extraction for search capability that they need, and I know that they need some sort of function to be able to generate training data programmatically using weak supervision techniques that are going to generate label functions and allow you to scale. So that bit of information can begin to form the foundation of a strategy and look for opportunities for scaling across your environment where you can try to execute on lots of different business problems with a couple capabilities. So that's the big strategy piece one. The second one is the quick POC, and to be perfectly honest with you, if this is a possibility, I usually recommend this as the better approach, simply because doing a quick POC is going to give you some organizational momentum and some traction and give your organization some familiarity with this technology, so that if you then go do a bigger strategy, you're starting from the basis of some organizational knowledge. So the challenge with doing a quick POC is most people don't know, where do I start? Like, what do I do? What models I use? You have so many questions because you don't want to pick the wrong initial use case. So let me put some of your fears at ease. So in reality, you're not going to be able to make a huge business impact on a quick POC. Ideally, you want to try to constrain this POC to about 4 months. That seems to be the optimal amount of time to get data, train a model, demonstrate the feasibility of a particular solution before you go make a bigger investment. And it's enough time to get enough to show enough demonstrated potential value, but not so much time that the organization gets tired and you have to spend a huge amount of money on it. So how do you pick the right use case for a POC? Well, one of the first questions you want to answer is, what type of model architecture am I going to use? And there's a million models out. Well, there's not a million models. There's about to be a million models. So the choice of model is going to change. But generally speaking, you want to try to pick the most advanced and current model you can use that doesn't collide with any security or policy constraints that you have that may be, model approval or sending data outside of your environment. So right now, it's pretty simple. If you can use GPT-4, you want to use GPT-4 because it's the best out there and it opens up so many other potential opportunities in your environment. If that's not a possibility, then the best alternative is probably something in the BERT family of NLP transformers that most companies have been using for the past several years, where there's lots of proven use cases and techniques for training the models. So those are your two choices. This is as of April 25th. By tomorrow, there could be new models, and that particular device may be moot. The reason you want to pick the model architecture first is that's going to help you focus on the type of use case you want to pursue. Once you pick the model architecture, here's some guidelines for picking the right use case. You want to pick one in which you have very motivated business partners. I can't tell you how important this is. So whether or not it's the highest ROI is not as important as if you have a partner that's going to be responsive and cooperative and going to help you demonstrate the feasibility of this technology. It's huge. The second one is you want to pick one for which you have access to data and the data itself is not of a sufficient level of sensitivity that you're going to have to run through a lot of policy and data security constraints to be able to use it. So if there's this data set that's easily available and it's either public or it's not so critical, like an employee policies or internal compliance policies, that no one's super concerned about that data getting leaked out. Like if it's HIPAA compliant data or customer account data, where there's a tremendous amount of security issues around it. So those are critical. And finally, you want to try to pick a use case where you can build your training data programmatically. Now, as much as there's a tremendous amount of talk about models and training model types and all the different ways you can train them, as it turns out, for use cases in the enterprise, the number 1, 2, 3, 4 most important, engineering asset you need is high quality task-specific training data for your NLP models. And the best way to get good training data, or the fastest way to get high quality training data, is to pick a use case or a problem where you can generate that training data programmatically. So you want to pick use cases like talk to your documents. So sometimes this is called question and answering, or semantic search, something where you can use embeddings and vectors and scan through lots of documents quickly without going back to your business customers to find the use case. Or using the example I suggested previously, something where you're going to try to help them do information extraction for search, where you can start with a set of keywords that you can use to bootstrap your label functions and get a model going quickly. The reason you want to do that is because within the enterprise, generating high quality training data can be extremely time consuming and expensive. And it's because all your employees are busy, and the people who are the experts in a domain, who are the ones that really have the knowledge about the information they want to come out of the model, they're usually the busiest and oftentimes the highest paid people. They don't have the time to be able to sit with a product team for hours and either hand label documents or even give tons of feedback. You get an opportunity to have conversations with those people in 15 to 30 minute bursts, and so you've got to make it very actionable and quick. Get the information you need out of them so that your team can start training the models to execute on the particular use case. So anyway, I realize there's some guidelines. There's a lot of other considerations of the right use case. Where your interfaces and how it's going to get deployed to the user and data access and deployment. But those are all things that you can figure out with time, and they're not really what you need for your first POC. For the initial POC, the second of the two strategies, you want to try to get a model built. You want to try to demonstrate feasibility of the technology in your environment on your data, so that people see real examples of how it could make an impact in their business, and the technologies isn't so sophisticated. You're not going to deploy something into production in a 4-month pilot, and that shouldn't be your goal. So anyway, I hope that's helpful, and I hope these are some tips that help you begin your large language model strategy. Thank you very much.